you at home or watching this afterwards, we're a minute or two late hopping on because we were having a riveting conversation about kombucha and how it is made and all the lovely things. So that's what's going on here live this morning. But we're glad you could join us however you're joining us today. So it's good to see you guys, your smiling faces here in the room on this kind of cloudy, rainy morning. Although I know the plants are loving the rain.
And it's a full moon tonight.
Is it? And Elby says it's a full moon tonight. So the moon was very pretty last night. So today we are going to have a discussion on working with the law. And so we just came off of a round of doing Prosperity Plus, and the book Working with the Law by Raymond Holliwell is one of the texts that Mary Morrissey used to develop the Prosperity Plus class. Her mentor, Bob Proctor, was influenced by Raymond Holliwell, so there's the change. And so just, I don't know if Raymond Holliwell, other than Prosperity Plus, is not a person that I've heard about much. So just a little bit about him is that he was a student and master of the laws of living and was informed by years of research and study to discover the truths of life. He was born in 1900 and transitioned in 1986. And his intention was to present teaching simply. He didn't want to use high-minded words. He wanted it to be something that anybody could pick up and be able to understand, or at least be intrigued by, or get their curiosity flowing. He didn't like the use of vague statements. He didn't like the use of vague statements that sounded pretty or promising without helping the reader get to results. He thought people could grow in knowledge and are able to form better opinions in order to change their views if they can digest what they're looking at. And he said the wise man changes his mind, the fool never. In the early 1930s, he began functioning as a lecturer and instructor and started sharing his insights on metaphysics, spirituality, and the power of the human mind, and became recognized for his ability to synthesize intricate things into conveniently understandable ideas, making him a prominent speaker in New Thought movement. So it also said that he was unique at the time because when he wrote to both men and women, even before it was politically correct to gender balance. So that said he felt that all people should be hearing this message regardless of gender. And so he did not keep women from coming to his lectures, and he encouraged them in their new thought the same as he did the male participants. He said he believes the law teaches how to use divine intelligence, and that mastering how to bring balance, harmony, love, and joy into one's life is for everyone. By following these laws, a person's life will blossom and be more nourished so they can become happier and a beacon of service to others. So this book was first published in 1964. So he started his lecturing in the 30s and then finally put something on paper for this book in 1964. And it goes through the 11 universal laws that, when comprehended as well as applied, can cause a much more fulfilling and thriving human existence. And so, like I said, if you look back through, as I was looking for information on him and then just looking at New Thought, like the New Thought movement, these 11 laws very much were the influence of that. And there's, like I said, Mary Morrissey and Bob Proctor. And then, of course, Bob Proctor also mentored Mary Morrissey, but also Wayne Dyer. Did I say that right? Wayne Dyer. Like, that did not sounded like, yes. Anyway, and Michael Bernard Beckwith were the three of his probably most well-known people that he mentored throughout his teachings. And so there's just a heavy influence of all of this. And so as I was coming to do the class again, it's like these are the 11 laws, and they are absolutely things that we talk about all the time. And I think my curiosity was, it's kind of like the going back to basics, or like the fundamentals. Like we get past that, or we get into other things, and are we remembering to come back to like this is the law behind all of those other things. And so I wanted to dive in again and get my foundation firmed back up. And so he begins this book with the statement, "The question uppermost in the world of thought today is whether a man has the capacity, equipment, and power to control his life, whether he can be what he wants to be, or whether he is a drop in the great ocean of life."
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And so I think when he says a great drop in the ocean of life, I think in that moment, he's using that to mean like you're insignificant. Yeah. Like you're but a drop in the ocean, like that would be an insignificant thing. Because when I first read that, I'm like, oh, we use that analogy all the time. But in further reading, it was like he's saying, is it, do you have that power and control over your life? Or are you just an aimless thing in a sea of circumstance that you can't control? He also reminds us that there was a mental picture established within the mind of the Creator before every creation becomes a reality, and that every idea or mental picture must produce after its own kind as the law determines it so. And so Mary talks about that like everything is created twice. First it's created in thought, and then it's created in reality. And so for this reason, when we change our thinking for the better, we're automatically taking the first step at changing our lives for the better. And I will tell you, even in this, like going back and thinking like, oh, I need to go back and remind myself of the fundamentals, I found myself going, oh yeah, law of thinking, been there, done that, got it. And I wanted to move past, and then I think it was in the next chapter, there was somewhere that I was reading and something said like, the law of thinking is the fundamental law. Like if you don't have that right, meaning you don't understand the power of your thoughts and your thinking, then like you're not going to be as effective in employing all the other laws intentionally. Like they're always working. They're always doing what they're doing. But anyway, I just thought that's just an interesting side note that I was like, oh yeah, and wanted to move past it, and then I had to make myself go back and like really look at it again. He also says that all we may ever desire to have and to be is ours for the asking as we correctly apply the law of life, and that there's 11 laws. So the first law is the law of thinking, which is our power to think determines our state of living. As we are able to think, we generate the power that travels far and near, and we attract what we create. And this is where those ideas of paying attention to what you're paying attention to, noticing what you're noticing, thoughts creating our experience, our thoughts becoming things, and it made me think, we've started every Sunday again singing our thoughts or prayers as we go into meditation. See mixed facial expressions in the room. That cracks me up. But that's what it's talking about, the law of thinking. And so it's saying it's true whether we realize it or not, but once we recognize it as truth, we become more aware of our state of mind, and whatever we're experiencing in the world is a result of our state of mind. Mary Morrissey puts it into terms of common thinking versus real thinking, are some terms that she throws around in some of her work. And she talks about common thinking is things, it's just the mundane things that we're thinking about throughout the day, like, oh, what are we going to have for dinner? Or how am I going to pay the bills, or oh, I gotta organize, I'm headed to work, I need my laptop and my phone and just those things that you're just kind of doing throughout your day. So it's things that you need to move throughout your life, and it's things that you need to pay attention to, or you're going to get to work and not have your laptop, or not have an ingredient you need for dinner, but it's not a life-transforming thought for the most part. So that's what she considers like common thinking. And then when she talks about real thinking, that's the stuff that gets to like our inner convictions, our values, and our purpose. And so those are the higher thoughts that are attached to the things we're truly desiring, or things like, she uses the word destiny, how we feel about that word. But she says the thing is, we often tune those thoughts out, or we let them get drowned out by all the common thoughts that are going on. And so, because we live in the real world, and we live in this human experience, and there's lots of things going on. If you have a job, you've got to go to work, and so you've got to get the work bag ready, or you got to fix dinner, or you got to find something to feed your body. And so she says, well, we live in that world, which demands that we pay attention to certain things. We aren't forced to only pay attention to those things, and that's the balance. So using more time for real thinking, that deeper level thinking. And so Holliwell says, several times throughout the day, practice noticing what you're noticing, pause and notice your thoughts. If you don't like the thoughts you're noticing, are you able to choose a new thought and move forward? And so because that is so fundamental to working with all the other laws, my curiosity was, in this group, does anyone have a practice to get in tune with the law of thinking? Like, is there something you do that triggers you to notice what you're noticing, or if you're noticing something you don't like, what is your response to that?
I think I notice more quickly, day by day, when I'm saying something really negative or judgmental or something like that, and just go back to cancel, that's not what I think, and affirm my better thinking.
I journal every morning, and it's usually about the day before and what I caught myself thinking, and it was like, and then in the journal I go, okay, what the heck was that about? And then I listen, and I get some wisdom that says, oh,
Yeah.
and like yesterday evening I'd been watching only movies that had a happy ending. And after one of them I got up and I headed to the kitchen and I just cracked up. And I thought, is that what I thought about my life, my entire life, that there's only one happy ending? And if the ending, which is probably getting closer, is gonna be happy, well then, what the heck? Let's just have it now.
Yeah.
And then I cracked up and I hit myself in the forehead like I could have had a V8.
No.
No.
I think what's happened, I don't know, I've been getting these major downloads in the last few months. And so sometimes my thought pattern is changing so much because of the download I just got. Is that, life is a zero moment. It's brand new every moment. And so, if you take life like that, and you just pray into it, or not really, or meditate on it, when I go down the highway, I like everybody who is whoever's here is supposed to be here. We're all synchronistically connected at every moment. And this is what just amazes me about the fact that there's absolutely nothing brand new, but then everything is brand new. It's a brand new moment, it's a brand new moment, it's a brand new moment. And so it's just that I feel what it does for me, because here you're thinking about these thoughts. The one thing that I heard yesterday is that there is no thought that has not already been thunk. Okay? And so when you get in tune, you can ask in yourself, knowing full well as you go into your temple inside your body, that the answer is coming. And there is always an answer for everyone, all the time. And it's just so, to me, it's just so magnificent on how perfect everything is in alignment all the time.
Yeah, you're getting into some of the other laws there.
I guess
Weaving
I'll
into-
shut
No, like that, I'm just saying, like it all weaves together. One of the things I noticed, that I think the same thing, like as we notice what we're noticing more, you're like quicker to come back to something or to recognize a thought that is maybe not in alignment with where you are today. I had that happen not long ago with someone where I said, I was like, oh, don't worry, I can beat myself up more internally than you can ever think to. Like, you don't have to tell me. And then I walked away from that conversation and I thought, that's no longer true. That used to be true,
Yeah.
but I don't think those thoughts about myself anymore. Like, I work really hard not to have that internal beat yourself up for days and days over a single sentence that you said, or maybe that's just me, but that's definitely an experience that I had in my younger life where, like, I could, sit and think I would still be beating myself up over a situation that happened a month ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. But that's not true anymore because of the way that I pay closer attention to my thoughts, and I don't want those thoughts ruling my now existence, and so I don't do that anymore. I thought, wow, that just like popped out of my mouth because that's something I used to say in those like I would have said that 10 years ago and it would have been very true. But even noticing that, and there's like a moment of growth there where you go, oh, where was that thought? Like, it was floating around in there. Like, I obviously hadn't completely released it because it very easily popped out. But understanding, okay, then now there's some work that needs to be done around why did that come out in that moment? I'm curious what made that conversation prompted. Another thing is when those kind of thoughts are happening, depending on where I'm at, if I'm by myself, I will say it out loud to myself. Say, stop. That thought's not serving your highest self today. Boop, yep, like, let's release that one out, put it somewhere else, and let's replace it with a thought that is pointing towards your highest good today. I think Linda has something, and then Elby.
I wanted to say, I took your class, and in something I remembered that I use every day is if you're getting stuck in having these negative feelings or getting them to leave you, is just to think, go to the higher power, go lift yourself up, literally in your mind, so that you aren't, you can let those feelings go.
One of the things that I've noticed that I've been doing is realizing that's just a story. And it's not necessarily, I don't know the facts, I don't know that person, it's just a story I'm making up in my head. And I think part of that, my sister was always having these conversations with people. Like she got stopped by a police officer, and for years, she was making up a different story that she should have said at that point.
Like the conversation was happening only
Yeah.
with her involved, right?
Yeah,
Like, not
and-
actually
and-
talking to her.
And I look at that and I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, that's probably a pattern that, you know, maybe was passed down in our family, and I notice that, and so I'm noticing, that's just a story, and I don't really know if it's true. And so I just, you know, checking like, whoa, let's not keep that one going.
Yeah, so that gets into things like Byron Katie's work, of, like, is it true? How do I know it's true? What evidence do I have that it's true? Who would I be if that wasn't true? Or what would I do if that wasn't true? Yeah. John?
I have 3 brief practices that I do. Every morning I wake up and I realize that I'm breathing.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah. And I just focus on the breath that leads me into a state of gratitude. And the third thing is when I notice judgment, whether it's from within my own thoughts or I notice it being expressed by in the media or by someone who I'm with, I hear a ding, I hear the ringing bowl from DVD consultation team, because we practiced that for years. I was in a group where we had somebody observing, listening for any judgment, and then they would ring the bowl and we'd have to figure out what the judgment statement was. And to this day, I still feel a little internal ring every time somebody makes a judgmental statement, and it's kind of stuck with me. And it makes it easy, even when it comes from internally, to kind of let it go.
Yeah. So the next law is the law of supply. Oh, sorry, Susan.
One last thing, the other thing is if you catch yourself having those thoughts, the next thing I do is go into appreciation of anything around me. If you're in traffic, just, you know, oh, hey, you know, if there's some guy being a pain in the butt in traffic, appreciate him.
That's what I'm still working on. I have a hard time.
That's their little heart.
Yeah, I don't know if it counts when I'm like, 11 likes, 11 likes.
It's better than the alternative.
That's when I laugh at myself. I'm like, oh, this
See,
whole...
that's when you do one of these. Oh, I could have had
Yes.
V8.
When you are traversing Branson tourist traffic at the height of season, that's my most challenging.
Just don't.
Well, I'm there. I work there, so I'm there every day. And so yes, that's what I'm like. They're. I have to think. They're tourists. I've also been a tourist in places where I was not driving the way the locals would drive, and I have to give grace. But I just want to get to my office. So the law of supply. Which the law of supply is really just, it's the 3 things. There's an unlimited supply of every good that we could possibly imagine. You and I are entitled to a full and ever increasing supply of everything we need or desire, and everything comes from infinite source. And so it's that everything's available to us at all times. We're sitting in abundance, sitting in supply. It's all around us. And it's through our mental development and practice that we allow our supply in. And so like that's the key, is are we allowing it in? Are we recognizing it? Are we noticing it? And this is part of the law that Jesus gave, that what brings you desire when you pray, believe that you have received it and you shall have it. So Holliwell says that the work is to create the magnet of supply. And so he says our mental magnet then is greatly reduced in strength by worries and fears, and our inflow of good is slowly closed off or muted. If our mental force becomes too weakened, we may even repel what little good is trying to reach us. Likewise, the mind magnet of a person can be stimulated to become a strong force of attraction. And so he talks about, noticing that supply and working with this law as strengthening your mental magnet. And then it starts to work with law of attraction at the same time, which is that they're all intertwined. They also, and Mary talks about this in her coursework as well, that this law supports perpetual increase, so progress and growth. And so when one good is realized, there can be desire for other good, and you can move to bigger and greater things. And that she talks about sometimes we have a thermostat and we set it to the level of good we think we deserve or we can possibly attain. And so she's talking about, it's like setting a thermostat in your house. So if you have it set on 72, you expect the temperature to be within a couple of degrees of 72 because that's where you have the thermostat set. And she talks about, like, sometimes we set our supply thermostat to 72 and we don't realize that we are in control of the thermostat. We could bump it, depending on if it's winter or summer, we could bump it in the direction, we can make it go higher. But we have to believe that that supply is available to us and we have to allow it in. And she, it's the same, if you set the thermostat to 78, but you don't really believe that you deserve 78, then sometimes that's where things happen, like the thermostat quits working, or like the air goes out, or the heat goes out, because we're blocking in some way. Like, we don't really believe we can attain it, and so then we kind of create situations that keep us from that, because really the thermostat is set at 72 and we don't believe it can go away from that. And so this is just a reminder within the law of supply that it is not, he even has a passage in there about, or maybe that's something else I was reading, but they were talking about, someone says, well, yeah, but if you've got so much and then you still desire more, isn't that greedy? And maybe that was something that Bob Proctor said, and he was like, yeah, but it sounds like you're attaching a negative to the word greed. And he's like, if you are desiring more with the understanding that you having more doesn't mean anyone else has to have less, then you could say you're being greedy for yourself, but that greed is not, it's not based on pushing someone else down or keeping someone else from having. It's just the understanding that, yeah, I can have as much supply as I want, and I can play in this human world with all the things that I desire, and it doesn't, because everyone has the same access. And so he says, a man's life consists not in the abundance of the things that he possesses, but in the consciousness of that which he possesses, the whole world and all its wealth, that we're only able to enjoy what our consciousness permits us to discern. And so, like, that's the statement that backs up all of that. And he says that to fully live in this law of supply, that abundance and supply, those words are kind of one, and he says you have to really think in supply, you have to talk supply, you have to live supply, with every thought, like keeping our thoughts so occupied with ideas of plenty that any and all drone thoughts of lack or loss will be destroyed. And the drone thought is a reference to a beehive. The drone bees that he uses. When I read that again in my notes, I was like, drone thoughts? What? And I was like, oh yeah, there was this whole thing about bees and drone bees, and anyway, I'm not going to go into it, but that's where it comes from, if that word threw you off too.
We should all be queen bees.
Yeah. We are encouraged to see the abundance and prosperity that's all around us, to surround ourselves with others who do the same. And so I know some reminders. I find myself, one of the big things that pops in my mind when I'm when I notice that there's lack thoughts, Daniel Nahmod's song, More Than Enough, like the lyrics of that will start playing in my mind. Sometimes it's just getting quiet and breathing and noticing the abundance all around. Does anyone else have any great abundance supply practices?
Gratitude.
Yeah. Like keeping a gratitude journal, or just noticing, just throughout the day, having those gratitude moments.
I mean,
grew up in the, at least, I grew up in the 20th century in the United States. I mean, how could we not be just overwhelmed by everything that we have and that we have access to? And I struggle sometimes with some of Morrissey's stuff because, and some of the stuff here, because I'm really okay with what I have. And it doesn't mean that I don't sometimes want more, but I don't hyper focus on it. Oh, I gotta have more. I gotta have this or I have to have that. I'm more focused on, you know, what a lucky dude I am. How it's my birthday every effing day. and I just don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I think it's more, you know, like, he talks about, in Law of Receiving, like, that there's been a bit of a pitfall of people, getting caught up in the getting of things and the, like, manifestation of material wealth, and that it's not all about that, right? And so, like, even in Prosperity Plus, like Mary talks about, there's like 4 quadrants of your life, and financial abundance is only one quadrant, one piece of the whole puzzle. And so he talks about that too. So it's really like the desires to have more and do more. It's really just like, if you have a creative thought and it's something that would make you happy or whatever, like, do you believe that it doesn't say you have to be discontent with the life that you currently have. But I think it's just knowing that within the laws, if that creative thought comes to you, do you understand that the laws, like the divine mind, like helped you like download that thought, and that the universe would make a way for you if that is something you truly desire to make happen.
I really believe that our goal should be to become children. Because as he was saying, oh, the glory of being in the United States and having, but the little child walking down a lane in India is so happy because they found something to eat. They're just grateful. They're just so, wow, it's just a wonderful life. And so when you're around children a lot, you can see in their eyes how they look at us like, what the hell is wrong with you people? There's just so much to enjoy. Why can't you have fun? And so you're like, you know, I feel we truly need to do is to learn to have fun with ourselves, to have fun with what we're doing. And the more we become as a child, the closer we become to the all that is. Because he's having fun with us. We might as well have fun with him. His answer is always yes. If you want more fear, he'll give it to you.
The grandkids are always wanting, that just made me think, every day is a yes day. The grandkids always like, can today be a yes day? I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Yes Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like where the adults can't say no about anything all day. And I don't know any, maybe there are other families where you can have a yes day and truly put no restrictions on it. With our grandchildren, we have to have some boundaries. Like, it's yes within these bounds, because they can dream up some pretty big things. Like, let's get on a plane in an hour and go to Disney World. Well,
Abraham's. Every day should be a yes day.
while that is a
It's all yes.
possibility, we could do that. We're choosing not to do that today. I had another thought about law of supply and I lost it. Oh, I was gonna say, to your point, Gary, like, and John may remember, because I can't remember the exact location, but there was a study done at one point where they were looking at, like, happiness and satisfaction with life, And one of the happiest places they found with the scores that were the highest was a very small area.
Bhutan.
Yes, with like, they had a very low, national income. They, like, by most people's standards, most of them were living in a poverty level. But they were like the happiest, most grateful, non-materialistic people. And so it is all relative, right? Like, it's relative to the environment that you're placing yourself in, or to your practice of gratitude, like. And so it really, like, that's where this focus on material manifestation, and I think some of that, like, that sounds great, right? Like, that's, I don't know, it sounds great in our culture. It's definitely what is put out there, that like, you're doing the best and you're successful when you have lots of things. You have the big house, you have the nice car, you have. And so even when things like The Secret came out, and there's like this attempt to like put out to the masses these thoughts about the laws, it like wasn't the whole picture, right? Or like, people didn't hear the whole picture. They just heard, you do this and you can have a Lamborghini sitting in your driveway, but maybe not understanding the other laws that were at play behind them. Capitalism. Yes, and so it like that, you have to like, it's all relative to all of that. But I agree, like, he does talk a little bit about, and Mary talks about this in Prosperity Plus, you know, like, if we look at the advancements and how, like, things kind of go along, if you look back in history, like, there's long stretches of time where there weren't, like, giant advancements in technologies and things, and then all of a sudden you see, like, one thing happen, and then you see a flurry of technological advances. And so they talk about that it's like kind of everyone, like the collective consciousness is going along and thinking like, well, this is what is, and this is what we have, and oh, wouldn't it be nice? But it takes that one person to say, hey, maybe if we put wheels on something, it'll be easier to move things around. And then when that happens, then someone else goes, oh, that was a really good idea. Well, I've always thought this would be a good idea. And then like they start to think, well, it's possible because I saw something happen. And so it made me think like, that's the age we're in right now, is whether people know they're working with these laws or not, there's so much evidence of possibility of like big advancements and like crazy things happening. Like, I don't know, even just thinking about like, I was having a conversation with some friends over the weekend about AI technology and like what it's what the capabilities are now and how it is, you know, set to shape our reality. And so like we're in a very fast moving part of history. And I know my grandfather talked about that. Before he transitioned, for a school project, I had the opportunity to interview him about things that had happened in his life. And he would tell me stories about the things like going to the big city and eating in a restaurant for the first time in his life at like age 13 with his dad. That he didn't even know that was a thing until his dad took him on some trip and they ate in a restaurant. And he's like, and now you can just drive through McDonald's like in every town in the country. He's like, that did not exist, like that didn't exist. There was one place that you could go to get food if you didn't live in that area, and everybody had to go to that one place. And he talked about you sat at a long table and everybody paid a certain price, and it was like family style. They brought out, there wasn't even individual plates until later in his life. And he talked about just like the changes in leisure activities and all the things. And computers were like just on the, like, I was using, that was part of my function in my grandfather's life. was he didn't want to learn how to use a computer, but he wanted me to use the computer for things that he was curious about. So that was always, I would always get an assignment. Whenever I saw my grandfather, he'd be like, hey, I heard that you can use this internet thing to find out this piece of information. And so he would give me like something that he was curious about. And he would expect that the next time I came back, I would have printouts with the information that he wanted. And I would say, Grandpa, I can show you how to do this. And he's like, nope, that's not for my generation to figure out, is what he would say to me. He's like, that's for your generation and beyond to figure out. And I can't, he's like, what I've seen in my lifetime, I can only imagine what you'll see in your lifetime. And at the time, I was, I think 16 or 17, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Now, at my current age, I'm like, he's so right. Like, could not even imagine how quickly that would happen. And it's all this that we're talking about. That as people thought, oh, well, if that's possible, maybe this is possible. If this is possible, then this is possible. And it just like snowballs from there.
I have a grandson that's 10, and my grandson that's 10 is already programming
Mm-hmm.
computer games.
Yeah, I have a friend that's a teacher, so they're coding in 2nd grade.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like,
Yeah. It's crazy. Like I had one class in college where we had to do like some basics of coding, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. And so to think of 2nd graders doing that now is just like mind
he
blown.
has his own YouTube channel.
Of course. doesn't ever know. So the next law is law of attraction, which is, if we believe that what we seek is already there, and it's just at a different frequency than we are vibrating at, we just connect to that vibration and bring it into our experience. So the 3 steps to the law of attraction are interest. So focus on what we're interested in. Attention, put attention towards that. And Holliwell said, I once heard that the only way the universe knows where our intention is where our attention is. So we place our attention, whether it's for good or ill, and the universe responds perfectly to the law. Wherever we place our attention, therein lies our intention, whether it's for failure or success. And so that's something we've heard in other teachings as well. And then expectancy, you have to expect that the vessel will be filled and be open and receptive for that. And he says when we charge our thoughts so firmly with the idea that there are no failures, then all we have to expect is success.
I heard where this is why you follow your excitement or what you want to do, because most of life is chopping wood and carrying water. So if you're not excited about how you're going to accomplish that, you're not going to be excited about carrying wood and chopping water. You're going to try to find a recliner and not do anything. And I'm finding that more and more in my life, is that I can get over the chopping wood and carrying water if I'm doing something that I really, really am excited about getting done. And I'm okay with it.
Okay. He also says it's no use to desire a thing unless you expect to actually get it. And so,
That's so perfect.
yeah, so he says desire without expectation is just an idle wish or daydreaming. And so I think that's where, like, it made me think like, oh, that's a pitfall I've been in before in my life, not understanding like, well, why isn't this law working?
It's almost
But-
beating up on yourself.
Well, I think it's just recognizing,
I say it's stepping on your shoestrings.
yeah,
It's like I said, it's almost like beating up on yourself because you want it, but you refuse
oh,
to
I see what you're saying, yeah.
allow yourself to expect it.
Yeah, yes. But, John, that's a great analogy. Like, you're stepping on your own shoestrings, so you're like, man, why can't I get anywhere? Why isn't this working? And then you're like, oh, if I would just move my other foot, then I could move forward. Yeah.
But this is the same thing about excitement, is that even if you step on your own shoestrings, you're so excited about accomplishing the thing that you really want to see come into your life, you're gonna get back up and tie your shoestrings and you're going to get after what your excitement
Well,
is
you'll
all
notice
about.
it, you'll notice it sooner, right? You'll notice like, hey, wait a minute. Like you start looking, instead of just being like, oh, that's right, I never can move forward, the universe is always against me, I guess I'm just stuck here.
Yes,
Like
yes,
that's,
yes, yes.
that's not understanding, but if you know that these laws are at play and you're like, wait a minute, like what's going on here? Because I know if I'm feeling this strongly about something, that the universe will work to my good. So like, what action am I not seeing? And then that's when, you know, you might look down and be like, oh, I just need to move my foot off these shoestrings, and then it's full steam ahead. Anyway, you guys, y'all know me well enough to know that I really like a good visual image of things, and that, like, I have a whole story playing in my head about somebody stepping on their own shoestrings now. Thanks, John. But those are the things too that will replay in my mind later. Like when I'm having a moment where I'm stepping on my own shoestrings, like that's the image that's going to come into my mind and remind me of this whole conversation. Yes, and I'll get off my shoestring, tie my shoe, and get back on track.
I was just telling yesterday at the A group that I went to a meeting years ago that was, they were called Arnold Patent Groups, and he was an attorney and he wrote a book, You Can Have It All, and they were little chapters of the Universal Principles. And so we would get together and focus on one of those little chapters and then go out and live the week and practice it and then come back and share how that worked that week. And there was something so making it real and being able to realize that these are real and that they work if you work them, if they're working if you don't, you know, that happened with that sharing of hearing all the people sharing how it actually was, like actual examples, and that every week it was, you know, and there was something about that that changed this part that makes this thing so difficult to trust and believe that we have some power in our cooperation with what manifests, but it's almost the letting go, like it's a weird mix of putting it out there, you know, and then not hanging on and trying to figure out the details, and then it's like so magic the way stuff just comes to you and falls in place when you just do that.
Yeah, and then, you know, Holliwell talks in the book about how, you know, we can often see the law of attraction at work and these laws with small, not necessarily insignificant, but smaller things. You know, he says we could probably all tell a story about that we were thinking about a book that we really wanted to read, or we were thinking about a meal we would really like to have, or something, and a friend calls us out of the blue and says, hey, do you want to go eat at this restaurant? I'm craving tacos and I want to go to whatever, and you're like, oh, like I've been thinking about that all week, that's where I wanted to go. Or someone says, hey, I just read this great book, and they hand you the exact book that you were thinking of buying. And he's like, we often accept those things, and we're like, oh yes, the universe is working for my good, like it brought this meal to me, it brought this book to me. And he goes, but then when we get into like the big picture stuff, we either don't pay attention or we don't recognize the things that are happening. We don't give gratitude to the little things that are happening along the way that get us there, or we lose sight of those things. And it's just an interesting, so it's like these laws on one level, they're so very simple, right? It's so very simple. But then putting them into action in our lives with all the things and the myriad of circumstances and life experiences and all the things, like that's where we like complicate it in our humanness. And so like that's what I felt like the value of coming back today, like even just talking through these things and like learning from each other about how do we put these laws to work in our lives, because that's really what we're doing here in the business of transforming our lives, is understanding these fundamental truths and putting them to action.
This is just something that just has been hitting me for the last week, is that the one thing that gets most in my way is my logical mind. I want to know why I received this and how it happened so I can do it again. Okay? And so it gets in my way of just letting it be. It just is.
Ain't it cool?
I don't know if you could hear Susan, she said, and ain't it cool?
Ain't it cool? Yeah.
And here it is, and ain't it cool? So I'm looking at time.
I love it.
We're gonna talk about, so we're gonna go to law of increase, and then I'm gonna save law of receiving for next week, because there was some really interesting stuff that I'm like curious to have a really robust conversation about. So law of increase is what we've already kind of hit on, is the law of praise. So praise is that avenue that like helps us to build on what is already there. Like as we give attention to it, as we praise it, then we're opening ourselves up to spirit, because in order to sit in that gratitude and truly appreciate and praise something, we have to acknowledge that connection, right? Like that's the whole practice. And so he says every time we do that, we lift our consciousness to a higher realm, and we just become a stronger and stronger channel to receive the supply and the good that is all around us. And it's kind of what we've all been talking about. An open hand is needed in order to let go of the grip on what we know. Yeah. So
Plus to accept.
yes,
Have an open hand.
yes,
to
like
accept.
you have to stay open. And so he says praise changes our observation and our whole outlook on life. In the past, we might have been in the habit of seeking our weaknesses or failings, as well as the shortcomings of others. And as we become a person of increase, we begin to see things differently. We are in the habit of looking for accomplishments, good, beauty, and praise. And I like that phrase, become a person of increase. So a person of expansion, a person swimming in the abundance and recognizing that. Like that made me think, I am a person of increase. Like, ooh, like put that on and carry it around. That feels really good. And that as we do that, we're changing our human self, right? And changing how we show up in the world and how we interact with others. And he says we become a radiator of praise and joy and courage and happiness. And that not only impacts our experience, but is rippling out to those around us and showing others that that is possible, that you can live in that and be in that. And that our inner self begins to retain those praiseworthy thoughts and starts to set up new ways of thinking. We've talked about that before, like new neural pathways of praise. And I find that that's another thing in me that's changed, is even in those hard moments, very quickly coming to what am I grateful for learning in this moment? Or what did it bring about that I can benefit from in moving forward? Even when Mary, I love that she has a phrase, and this is another one that pops in my head frequently, dark chapter, not the whole book. And so I'll, like in those hard moments, sometimes I'm like, whew, dark chapter, not the whole book. But what that does for me is makes me start thinking, well, if I'm writing the next chapter and it's not as dark, what did I learn from the dark chapter, and what do I want to see in the next chapter so it's lighter? And that automatically switches my brain into a new pathway of, we're not gonna sit and swim in the darkness and be, we're gonna move forward to recognizing like, okay, like something happened, it doesn't feel great, dark chapter, not the whole book, we're moving forward. Yeah.
Sometimes when something happens and it's not going according to plan, I think, well, so what is it that's so much better that is now supposed to happen that I didn't plan?
Yeah, this or something better.
And I just don't even feel like I have to push some circle into a square
Mhm.
peg.
Well, and sometimes it's like, what was that preparing me for? Who did I need to be able to receive the good that's coming my way. And like, I needed that experience to be able to recognize it and appreciate it when it came. Like, I feel that in my own life so often. That even when I can't in the dark moment find it, maybe a month later or something, I'm like, oh, that was preparing the way for me to get here. Like, if I hadn't gone through that experience, I wouldn't have been in tune with, you know, whatever was needed to move me into a spot that's even better than where I thought I was headed.
The humility of not knowing.
Yeah, we don't always do so great at that, do we? All right, so I think we're going to stop there today. Next week, we're going to talk about other laws. We'll see if we get through all 11. But there is law of receiving next week is where we're going to start, and there was a really intriguing passage. I'm really curious to get your thoughts, and I don't want it to be rushed. So that's me selfishly saving that for next week because I don't
Well,
want to do it
can't
in
you
5
give
minutes
us a
time.
hint now that you've
It's
wet our
about
whistle?
it's about like giving intentionally and yeah, like it's a piece of, I don't know. I'm not. We'll get there. Like I'm just real curious about it. Got you on the edge of your seats. Now you'll come back next week. So announcements for our July Earth Care today, right after service. Linda Kittle is going to be facilitating a class, recycling do's and don'ts. She's going to tell us what to do put in our bins over there and what to don't put in our bins over there. And do what?
When is that?
Today, right after service. We're going to come in here to Fellowship Hall and she's going to talk about the recycling. She and Paul are who generally empties our recycle bins and takes it to the recycling center. So they've become very well versed in what they will accept and what they won't accept and where it goes from there. So she's offered to do that. And if you know Linda, you know how passionate she is about that. One of my favorite things she says to her coworkers when she sees them throw something recyclable in the trash is she says, "Oh, you just thought that belonged in God's backyard?" Because she's got recycling bins set up all over. She's like, "Oh, does that belong in God's
Sounds
backyard?"
a little like a
I know,
guilt
she-
trip.
It does a little bit, but she, that's with her coworkers that she has a good relationship with, is her little reminder. So anyway, meditation tonight at 6 p.m. It's open to everyone. The monthly board meeting, so that should have been tomorrow night. We have had a difficulty getting the insurance company underwriters to respond to all of our questions regarding that new sex offender policy. And instead of having to put another temporary something in place tomorrow and then change it if they told us something different, the board meeting is being moved to Monday, July 29th. So it's 1 week from tomorrow so that we can hopefully just get that settled and get it approved. And again, if you sign up in the foyer, we'll email out a copy when we do have the final version that is accepted by the underwriters so that you can give comment on that. The Art of Henna with Tamra is going to happen on Saturday, July 27th at 2 p.m. It's a workshop open to everyone. Oh,
I came yesterday,
Oh.
I brought everything, and wait a minute, Susan said, isn't that music thing on the, anyway, so it's next week, not this right there.
she was a week early, guys. She was here yesterday. Nobody showed up.
I was
So-
glad, I got in time to email the people and go, oh.
So that will be fun. So you're going to be showing how to do henna, and people are going to get to practice with henna.
I'll just share some information and then we'll just jump in and play with some henna.
Awesome. The next Community Through Music is also July 27th at 7 p.m. Performances by Bob Stevens, who is a poet, Krista Meadows, and S.A. Bach. In the New Thought World Religion class next Sunday, we're going to keep talking about working with the law. We do have a custodian position open here at the church. If you want more details, you can email the office or talk to Dee or stop by the office. They're accepting applications until noon on Tuesday. And there is a job description you can read through if you're interested. Sunday, July 28th at 2 p.m. is the Metaphysical Day of Learning. And there's going to be presentations on topics like crystals, Reiki, manifestation, and more. And as well as a vendor market with all kinds of spiritual goodies for sale. Any additional
doors are gonna open at 1:30 for the vendor market though, and that's, I mean, you can probably just hang around after church after you get lunch or something.
Okay, good deal. That's
Is that
exciting.
I'm sorry, is that next Sunday?
Yes, next Sunday following, it'll, starts at 2, but she's saying vendor market opens at 1:30 and,
Here?
here, yep, here at the church. We're gonna do that. I say we. She is doing that. Cedar is doing that. Karen Crago's son Ernie is earning his Eagle Scout, and part of this is giving something to the community, so he's building a gazebo on our church property. And their first workday is scheduled for August 3rd. All volunteers are welcome to join and help if you want to be part of that project. And then the annual yard sale is going to be August 16th and 17th. So start filling boxes with things, or start looking around your house for things that you might be ready to release for the yard sale. And then a reminder that we always need a ton of volunteers to get that ready. And then if
I
you,
understand there's not gonna be a cod, that it's gonna be.
yes, we're trying, we're going to use inside space and see how that works. The cost of the pod has gone up significantly. And so, trying to see if we can use our own already available space. It does make it where you can't use it for anything else for a short period of time, but we're gonna see how that works. If it doesn't work for this one, then we'll go back to renting a pod, but, it's over $500 for us to rent a pod for the month.
Have they ever considered building a storage, is there a permit, is it permit?
We have, no, and that's why we purchased the pod that's out there. It's just not large enough for the annual sale when we take clothes and everything.
Are we taking clothes at the sale?
Yes, this is the sale that accepts clothing. And so it's just not big enough with the things that we have to store in there. Because when we rented the Luster house, we lost the storage in the garage. So we had to, that's the purchasing of this pod. And so there's just not enough space in that one. There's been discussion of either purchasing another pod to sit next to that one or building a storage shed. At this time, the cost of that was more than we felt comfortable putting out there. But if this doesn't work to be able to use our building, and we're going to continue paying $500 for a pod, then it will make sense to do something different, because we could have something that we could
When
use.
can people start bringing things?
Usually 2 weeks prior, so I would say the first week of August, we will start accepting things. Mary's gonna do the announcement in service, so she may have, that may be in her notes, the exact date to bring things. And then you can always sign up in the foyer or on our website to receive our weekly newsletter. Lisa does an amazing job with that, and there's always all kinds of information in there. And it links you back to the webpage for things that you can sign up for and do there as well. And that is the end of the announcement.
Did you do the grief support group announcement?
Oh, it's not in here this week, no. So
And also the drumming, both Monday night.
I think some of those that are regular things,
They don't know it's
they'll like make sure they're in the week before, and so the
And
announcements
that,
are.
yeah, and that's in the
So there's so
email.
much stuff going
It's in
on
the
in the
email
church.
blast, I don't
Yes.
know,
We have so many wonderful things going on that our announcements would take forever if we left everything in all the time. Isn't that a great problem to have? So,
yeah. He will.
yes, so thank you all for being here. We are complete.